Number 9. Kayla Campos. New Mexico woman Kayla Campos and her boyfriend Sydney were playing Pokemon Go at an Albuquerque park late one night in October of 2019 when they witnessed a robbery in progress. The couple attempted to simply leave the park and got into 21-year-old Campos's car to drive away. However, one of the thieves, later identified as 19-year-old Isaiah Garcia, approached the vehicle and fired several rounds at the fleeing couple. Campos crashed the car into an empty house after one of the bullets struck her on the neck. While her boyfriend was left unharmed by the altercation, Campos ultimately succumbed to her injuries at the hospital later that night. Garcia fled before the arrival of police, and New Mexico authorities didn't identify him as Campos's killer until an entire year later. In September of 2020, Garcia was charged with first-degree murder while already awaiting trial for murdering high school student Sean Market at a homecoming party just a month before the Pokemon Go attack. Number 8. Gene Siller. On July the 3rd of 2021, Gene Siller, a professional golfer and director of the Pine Tree Country Club in Kennesaw, Georgia, was gunned down by an armed assailant. Earlier on the day of the incident, the gunman, identified as 23-year-old Brian Roden, had crashed a white pickup truck into the club's 10th green before attempting to flee. 41-year-old Siller approached the area of the accident to check on the condition of the passengers, whereupon he discovered the bound bodies of 76-year-old Paul Pearson and 46-year-old Henry Valdez inside the vehicle. Sometime shortly thereafter, Roden fired the fatal rounds into Siller. Investigators later expressed their belief that the victim had been murdered because he witnessed an active crime taking place. Later that day, Roden was arrested for an unrelated traffic violation, and although he appeared nervous while being processed, officers at the station weren't initially aware of his involvement in the triple murder. Roden was ultimately released 3 days later, but the money he'd been carrying at the time of his arrest was confiscated. When a warrant was subsequently issued for his arrest in connection to the murders, police used the money as bait, leading Roden to believe he could return to the station to retrieve his belongings. He was then taken into custody again, but denied any involvement in the killings, proclaiming his innocence in an Instagram post on the day of his arrest. Number 7. Robert Ray and Mario Owens. 21-year-olds Robert Ray and Mario Owens were involved in a violent altercation while attending a music festival in Aurora, Colorado on July the 4th of 2004. After the young men were confronted by the event's organizers named as Javad Marshall Fields and Gregory Van for their alleged inappropriate behavior, a contentious argument erupted between the two parties. The altercation eventually turned physical when Ray attacked Marshall Fields while Owens fatally shot Van. Following the violence, the two assailants fled the scene. Concerned that Marshall Fields might testify against them in court, Owens and Ray subsequently devised a plot to silence him. In June of 2005, roughly a year after the initial incident, the pair murdered Marshall Fields along with his fiancée, Vivian Wolf. For the cold-blooded double homicide, both Owens and Ray were ultimately sentenced to death following their criminal trials. Numerous appeals were filed by the defense, but the verdict was upheld by the Colorado Supreme Court on each occasion. Then, in March of 2020, Colorado Governor Jared Polis issued a commutation for the two men. Their sentences were changed to life without parole in a ruling that shocked Marshall Fields' mother, State Senator Rhonda Fields, who stated, "He's made his decision, so I guess I have to live through that, just like I had to live with the death of my son." Number 6. Barry Fields. On September the 18th of 2021, 51-year-old Barry Fields was caught in the middle of what investigators have called a Wild West shootout. While sitting on his front porch in Norristown, Pennsylvania, on the night of the incident, Edwin Elas Cruz, aged 23, pulled in front of Fields' house in a Toyota Camry and proceeded to open fire on a group of men standing on the sidewalk, which reportedly included 25-year-old Brandon Darden and Joshua Aguido Jr., aged 20. The latter two returned fire with at least 20 shots fired, being reported by a witness during a subsequent call to 911. Although he'd only been an innocent bystander, Fields was caught in the crossfire and fatally shot in the head, the only lethal victim. Darden and Aguido Jr. were apprehended by the police and charged with first-degree murder, while Ela Cruz was arrested in Nebraska the following month, at which time he was extradited back to Pennsylvania. Police haven't released the reason behind the public shootout, explaining only that it had been the result of an ongoing dispute between the parties involved. Although first-degree murder charges are usually reserved for homicides committed with deliberation, the prosecutor resorted to a legal concept known as transferred intent, in which premeditation is shifted from the real target to the actual victim. Bail cannot be granted to suspects charged with this crime in the state of Pennsylvania, so the defendants weren't eligible for release prior to their criminal trials. Number 5. Shatavia Walls. 33-year-old Shatavia Walls was shot dead in her East New York housing complex by members of the 90 gang on July the 7th of 2020. Prior to the shooting, Walls had complained about fireworks being used during the 4th of July celebrations by her neighbor, Malik Miller. This wasn't the first time she'd gotten into a confrontation with Miller and his associates. The 27-year-old man had previously called her a snitch, and flyers were posted around the building labeling Walls a rat after she testified against another member of Miller's gang in a 2019 federal case. Then, on the night of her death, Walls attempted to escape her attackers, who had been waiting for her to leave her apartment, by running in the opposite direction and jumping over a ledge. However, the gangsters, later identified as Miller, Quentin Green, Cheyenne Fernandez, and Kevin Wint, all in their 20s, gunned the woman down execution style. Walls survived the attack but would die at the hospital 10 days later due to the severity of her wounds. All 4 suspects were charged with first-degree murder, as well as racketeering, trafficking illegal substances, and robbery. Number 4. Byron Nicholas. On August the 5th of 2019, Louisiana resident Hassan Norris refused to pull over his car for an unnamed police officer who'd caught him speeding. The 23-year-old motorist drove all the way to his apartment building and proceeded to fire several gunshots at the officer chasing behind him. The policeman was ultimately left unharmed, but Norris was eventually apprehended and charged with attempted first-degree murder of a police officer and aggravated flight from an officer. The defendant was released on bail, then failed to show up for a scheduled court appearance on October the 18th of 2021, and a warrant was issued for his arrest. While on the lam, Norris sent several threats to his 24-year-old neighbor Byron Nicholas, who'd reportedly witnessed the attack that precipitated his initial arrest. On February the 21st of 2022, Norris re-emerged and shot Nicholas to death, a crime that could have been avoided according to the victim's mother if the suspect had remained in custody during the duration of his trial. Norris was arrested once again and, as of the latest updates on the case, was awaiting trial at the Jefferson Parish Correctional Center. Number 3. Gerard Gethard. In November of 2020, Gerard Gethard murdered petty criminal Jerry White, aged 34, after waiting for him outside a tattoo shop in Norristown, Philadelphia. The deadly attack was reportedly meant as retaliation for White agreeing to serve as a witness against Gethard in his upcoming court proceedings. During a previous incident, 31-year-old Gethard had shot White in the arm, resulting in him incurring attempted murder charges. According to subsequent reports that contextualized the two men's feud, Gethard had learned of White's deal with the prosecution during preliminary hearings and would later overhear his defense attorney claiming the case depended on the account of a single witness. Without White, the lawyer told the judge, the matter would never get to trial. After the star witness's body was discovered, Gethard immediately became the prime suspect, given his unique connection to the victim, and was apprehended soon after the attack. In February of 2022, the jury declared Gethard guilty after deliberating for just 30 minutes, and presiding judge Gary Slow sentenced him to life in prison, without the possibility of parole, stating that he'd crushed the lives of so many people who care for him. Today's topic was requested by C.M. Geiselman. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Leticia Gallegos. On Christmas Eve 2006, Colorado woman Leticia Gallegos was stabbed over 60 times by her ex-husband, Albert, in her Denver home. The 30-year-old woman's corpse was discovered the following morning by her family, but fortunately, none of her 3 children were present during the attack. Leticia had reportedly obtained a restraining order against Albert after their separation, but he'd violated it a month prior to the deadly incident after she'd refused to take him back. In retaliation, Albert had assaulted his former partner, threatening her with a knife as he taunted her, asking her if he should kill her. That particular altercation had culminated with the man eventually letting Leticia go before stealing her car. Prior to her untimely death, the woman had reportedly been planning to testify against her ex in court. However, Albert ultimately eliminated a key witness against him and enacted a vengeful attack on his ex-wife in one fell swoop. The man later admitted to standing outside of Leticia's condo for over 45 minutes before he finally broke in and attacked her. Following the murder, Albert attempted to flee, but was arrested 2 days later in Los Angeles, California, after which he was extradited back to Colorado. The man ultimately pleaded guilty on August the 22nd of 2008 and was consequently sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Number 1. Heather Gamina Waters. On July the 15th of 2019, Arkansas man Anthony Gamina attacked his wife, Heather Gamina Waters, at their shared residence, inflicting severe injuries that ultimately landed her in the hospital. The 33-year-old victim, a mother of 3 who'd reportedly been suffering repeated domestic violence for several months, didn't contact the authorities after the alleged assault and instead called her mother, Joanna Russell, telling her that her husband had tried to kill her. Russell accompanied her daughter back home the following day, but she ended up leaving for the night after witnessing an argument between the contentious couple about how Gamina Waters' injuries would affect Anthony's ongoing domestic assault charges. Once the mother had left, Anthony proceeded to fatally strangle his wife with his bare hands and dragged her around the house with a rope strapped to her neck after she was already dead. He then faked her disappearance by reporting her missing, even joining her mother in the ensuing search efforts. Anthony's lies were eventually uncovered when Gamina Waters' body was found buried on a property near the family's home. She'd been wrapped in a carpet and was still wearing her hospital ID bracelet and sling. On June the 23rd of 2021, Anthony pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, but claimed that his wife was to blame for hurting his pride and honor. Presiding Judge Mark Ralphs sentenced the man to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years served, and responded to his claims about Gamina Waters, stating, "You're going to have plenty of time to contemplate how your conduct has impacted your honor and your name." Thanks for watching. Be sure to click on one of the links on your screen for more videos.